Hi, my name is Brenda Ness. I am the author of Secrets Revealed at the Time of the End, a book about end-time prophecy, which I believe the secrets that Daniel sealed until the time of the end have been unsealed. And I have used 14 prophetic numeric verses to reveal that information. It comes from chapter 6 of the book, and I have already made a 6a and 6b because it is the chapter with all 14 verses, so it's a very long chapter. I didn't cover the calculations very well, so I'm going to do that now. Here's the cover of the book I wrote. You can find my site at estherofisrael.wix.com/secretsrevealed. And when you go there, this is my YouTube site, but when you go to my site that lists my books for sale and everything, this is the home page. The top of the home page has my inspiration story. You can click on contact if you want to make any comments about my book. That's also if you're ordering a book and you live in a different country outside of the United States, you need to send me your country so I can check the price of postage to send you your book. And then at the bottom of the home page, I have the ordering information, and I also have a link to the YouTube site that you just saw. If you click on that, you can see all my videos. The chapters are numbered the same as the videos, and I do have the first two that I recommend you watch, the cover and the introduction, and then I also have a short ordering video that you can watch. So when you click on the YouTube link, you'll come to this site, my YouTube site. Now let's get back to the book, the calculations. That's where I'm going to start. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is step through all 14 of these, show you the 14 verses that they go with, and then show you the 14 spots on the graph that line up with them also. Number 1 is the 7 years of tribulation. Ezekiel 39:9, and they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and bucklers, bows and arrows, handstaves and spears, and they shall burn them with fire for 7 years. So after a major war against Israel, they will have enough remnants from that war that they won't have to cut down any trees in their forest. They'll be able to burn the weapons that they salvage. And on the graph, that is right here, 20 September 2021 in the evening through 20 September 2028 in the evening. On the Hebrew calendar, it will be 15 Tishri, the first day of Sukkot, through Rosh Hashanah, the New Year's Day, at the end of 29 Elul, when the sun sets. The 7 years include tribulation, great tribulation, and wrath. Okay, number 2, 7 months to bury bodies and cleanse the land after the first Gog-Magog war. So let's go read the verse. Ezekiel 39:12, and 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying them, that they may cleanse the land. So after this war, they're going to spend 7 months burying the bodies. And that is right here. 7 months, number 2. Okay, number 3, the 20th day of the second month. The witnesses are tested for 40 days and then they are sealed. Let's go look at the verse. Numbers 10:11. And it came to pass on the 20th day of the second month in the second year that the cloud was taken up off from the tabernacle of testimony. Now that's a little short on explanation, so you can go read it in context. But what this is Moses stopped in the desert before he got to Mount Sinai, and he had to assign leaders of all the families and stuff. So he stopped and he did that. So what I'm saying is that is the same thing that is going to happen in the end times, that the 144,000 leaders will be chosen and sealed. They will be chosen on 11 Tishri, taken out into the desert in the wilderness for 40 days of fasting, and then they will begin the 42-month greater exodus, which is at the same time as testifying for 1260 days. Number 4, 42 months of the greater exodus. Let's go read the verse. Revelation 11, 1-2. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. That is when I'm saying that the 42-month greater exodus is going to happen, because all these people are going to be coming to Israel. Back on here, I just pointed that out to you, 42 months greater exodus. It will last from the 20th day of the second month, which is Heshvan on the Hebrew calendar, all the way to Ta'anit Esther, 13 Adar, and that's when the Antichrist begins to reign. Okay, back to the verses, or the calculations. Number 5, 1260 days the witnesses testify in the wilderness. So let's go look at the verse first. Revelation 11:3, and you'll notice it follows right behind these other two. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days in sackcloth. Now, as I have mentioned before, and I will explain more thoroughly in an upcoming chapter, that is the 144,000 are actually 2 witnesses. Now, where do I come by that? Well, there's Revelation refers to 2 candlesticks. It refers to 2 olive trees. So the 2 olive trees represent the 2 houses of Israel, which are the tribe of Israel and the tribe of Judah, kingdom of Israel, kingdom of Judah, that I talked about before. So the 144,000 would actually be divided, and then the tribe of Levi is kind of split half and half. And I will probably explain that there are actually 13 tribes later on, because remember, Joseph's 2 sons were each given a portion, so sometimes they're shown separately and sometimes they're shown back together. Okay, let's move on to number 6. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to quick show you that, wasn't I? Here we go, right here. The witnesses testify for 1260 days, and then they are killed. So while they are testifying, they are leading people to Israel. Remember, I talked about 3 pilgrimages a year. Once the temple is restored, believers are supposed to pilgrimage to Jerusalem 3 times a year. So these guys are definitely going to be doing it, and they'll just bring bunches of people with them every time they go. So 42-month greater exodus, and they'll be testifying to these people at the same time. So these 2 periods overlap, and then there's an extra 28 days that they will be witnessing just in Jerusalem. They will head there for 13 Adar and stay there. Okay, back to the calculations, and we are down here on 6 and 7, which is the times of the Antichrist, a time times and the dividing of time, because remember the 43 months is 3.5 years, not 42, so it's part of a year, and then 42 months. So these are numbers 6 and 7 on the chart. Let's go look at the verses first for 6 and 7. Revelation 13:5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And 7, Dan 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a times, and the dividing of time. So let's pop over to this and take a look at 6 and 7 right here. The Antichrist rules 42 months / 3 years and a part of a year. And that is from 13 Adar, Ta'anit Esther, right where Haman left off, all the way through to the 9th of Av. Okay, back to the calculations, and we're looking at number 8. 3.5 days the witnesses lie dead in the street. Okay, so I briefly went over this before, so we're just going to quick look at this and get through this one. Revelation 11:11, and after 3 days and a half the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. Back to the chart, and that's this little blip here, right here in the light purple. That's the 3.5 days they lie in the street, from 12 Nisan 5785 to 15.5 Nisan 5785. Okay, back here to number 9 and 10. Time, times and a half a time, and 1260 days in the protected wilderness. Okay, so as I'm going through these, I don't know if you noticed, but some of them have a calculation down here. I use this array over here, and I counted up the number of days for you. So just pause the video, and you should be able to check that out and add those up and see that I have totaled to 1260 days, and up here also to 1260 days. So you should be able to check out those calculations. Here I have the end of 25, whole years of 26 and 27. Neither are leap years, so it's 365. So you just need to keep an eye on that. And then this is the beginning of the last part, and it goes to September 20th, which comes out to 264 days. Double check my work, and if you add those numbers together, you come up to 1260 days. Okay, let's go read the verses. 9 and 10. Got to scroll up here too. Revelation 12:6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Number 10. Revelation 12:14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. Now let's jump to the timeline and look at 9 and 10. Protected in the wilderness for 1260 days, or 3.5 years. So 9 and 10, that covers both of those verses, and they must leave in order to make the requirement of 1260 days. And by the way, that is why God put that in there, because if you just calculate, if you base this prophecy on just the 3.5 years, you could fudge this a little bit, because it doesn't have to be exactly 3.5 years. But when he says 1260 days, that's exactly what he means. So it is 1260 days from 12 Nisan 5785, April 9th, to Rosh Hashanah of 5789, or 1 Tishri. Okay, let's go on to number 11. Okay. A time, times and a half, the AC scatters the holy people until all is finished. So this is what I mean by when you go 3.5 years, this is like 10 days longer than the other prophecy that I just showed you. And we'll flip over and take a look at that. So we're looking at about 3.5 years again. And let's go read the verses first, like we usually do. Number 11, Daniel 12:7. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the water of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half, when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, and all these things shall be finished. Well, obviously, when God lets the Antichrist kill the witnesses, that is a scattering of the holy people, and he lets that happen to fulfill his prophecy. And this is where it is right here. As you can see, it starts on those 3.5 days when he kills them. He actually kills the witnesses right here, and then we have a time, times, and a half a time while the holy people have been scattered, and he's going around the world killing them for this 42-month part of his reign. But see, he wasn't allowed to kill the witnesses that first 28 days. But he was still going out carrying on a major war and killing a lot of other believers around the world. And then it ends 10 days later after Rosh Hashanah here. So the 3.5 years is like 13 days longer than this 3.5 years. But if you average them out, they both equal 3.5 years. One's just a little bit longer than the other one. And that's why he doesn't proclaim a certain amount of days here, but he does here. Exact amount of days. Okay, next we have number 12. 1290 days, take away the temple sacrifices, begin to set up the abomination of desolation until the end of the cleansing. See down here I have a beginning of cleansing. Here I have an end of cleansing. That's why you have to read the verses very carefully. Now let's go look at number 12. Daniel 12:11. And from the time that the daily sacrifices are stopped, they're taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, all through that time he has that set up, there shall be 1,290 days that the temple remains unclean, even though Yeshua starts cleaning it up on the 9th of Av. So let's pop over here and look at this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. That is this 1290 days right here. If you follow this little light gray line up, you can see that it starts exactly when the Antichrist starts to rule on the 13 Adar. Then it lasts 1290 days exactly. Again, he wouldn't say it if it wasn't exact. Until the temple is completely cleansed and purified. So Jesus calls up believers, the last group of believers, on Rosh Hashanah, the end of 29 Elul. As you follow this gray line up, you can see that here, 29 Elul. That's when he blows the trumpet at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah and calls believers up. And then this little extra couple of days here is the days that it takes until 3 Tishri, 3 days. It says Jesus will rebuild the temple in 3 days. Remember when I read that verse? When he spoke of it when he was alive, he was talking about the temple of his body. But he was also in a dual prophecy referring to the 3 days that he's going to build the millennial temple that we all get to worship in during the millennial reign. Okay, that was 12. Now we're going to move on to 13. 2300 days, the start of temple sacrifices to after the end of sacrifices and the beginning of cleansing. So let's go read the verses for that. Then I heard one saint speaking to another saint, and that certain saint which spoke said, How long will be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said to me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So that's the beginning of the cleansing. Let's hop over here and take a look at that. And here's the 2300 days up here. It begins at the start of the temple sacrifices. This is after the 7 months of burying the bodies, which ends on 11 Nisan exactly. That's when they start burying, is 11 Tishri. And then they have those 3 days, which I explain in some different verses, of making sure that the land is cleansed. Remember, I just talked about 3 days down here. It's a cleansing, a purification. Then they start the sacrifices on the in the evening. Would be they kill they kill the lamb in the 14th in the afternoon, and then the Pesach meal is the night of that evening after the sun sets. Remember, that's when the new day starts, so that'll roll over into the 15th. Well, that's the same time they start the sacrifices. So you start counting there, count 2,300 days from 15 Nisan, 5782. Count, 2,300 days, and guess what? It lands exactly on the 9th of Av of 5788, which is the day that Jesus throws the Antichrist out of the temple. He throws his abomination out and throws him out. And that is the beginning of cleansing. And then it takes all the way till down here to be completely cleansed. So this verse talks about the end of cleansing. The verse of the 2,300 days is talking about the start of cleansing. Just want to make sure that you understand that. All right, and then let's go back here to number 14. Blessed if waits on the Lord 1,335 days. From 2nd February, when the Antichrist becomes indwelt, and he will start killing people at that point. Not on a large scale, but he will begin his damage then. Okay, so let's go read the verse like we usually do. Daniel 12:12. Blessed is he that waits and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. Waits how or where or what? The people that wait in the protected wilderness. They take off. Let's go to the chart so I can show you this. They take off here right after the witnesses are killed, because that's when the abomination is done in the temple. That's when they take off. They go hide in the wilderness for 1,260 days. The 1,335 starts a little before that, because it starts when the Antichrist is indwelt. Then you count exactly 1,335 days, and it ends on Yom Kippur. Now, why Yom Kippur instead of Rosh Hashanah? Well, it's because that is Judgment Day, the final Judgment Day before the actual reigning with Christ starts. Because this is Tishri 10, and Tishri 15 is the wedding with Christ. So if you did not pass if you didn't pass Judgment Day because you didn't repent of all your sins, you don't get the white raiment, and you don't get to go to the wedding. See how all this fits together? And that's exactly 1,335 days. Okay, that's the end of the verses and the end of the calculations. I did have a little bit at the bottom here, just a little note here, that Passover week begins the 14th, when the lamb is sacrificed in that afternoon, remember? And then the night of the 15th is when they have the Passover meal, and this is the earliest that the first fruits wave offering can be, is 15 Nisan. It can't be any earlier than that, but it can be later than that when they count it out. And then the stars here were for Jesus rebuilds the temple in 3 days, and that coincides with this star up here, the single star, and the double star is up here. So you can pause the video and take a look at that. And then we're going to quick pop back to the timeline, because I do have a couple lines of information down here also. Because I wanted you to notice that there is a full 7 Hebrew calendar years also from point A to point C. Okay? See point A up here? This would be the 1st of Tishri in the first year when the tribulation is going to start. But the 7 years does not actually start until here, okay, on 15 Tishri. But for the Hebrew count, when you start reading the book of Revelation, in the beginning it says there's the sound of a trumpet, and then that would be in chapter 1. And then in chapter 4, John says there's the sound of a trumpet again. That is this time period here. This is the Rosh Hashanah trumpet that's blown on the evening where 29 Elul turns into 1 Tishri. And then there's a shofar blown again when at the end of Yom Kippur, when everyone have atoned for their sins and they've repented. So that's 2 trumpets there, and those are the trumpets in the book of Revelation. And then there is a trumpet again when you get over here, and this is for 1 Tishri again. That's what I said, exactly 7 years there. 1 Tishri again, and in other words, Rosh Hashanah, and there'll be a sound of a trumpet again. And that is the trumpet that calls up all the dead believers and the remaining living believers. The only ones that are still there, because see, the wrath has been performed here, the only living believers left on earth are either dead or they're in the protected wilderness, still being protected until they're called up by this trumpet. And that is the 1 Thessalonians 4 in chapter 4, and I will be covering that again later. Now the other things I wanted to show you at the very bottom of the page here is where letter A is. Yeshua calls John to heaven with the sound of a trumpet, Revelation 1:10, and then he tells him the corrections of the churches and the 10 days of awe. And then B, God calls John through the open door into the throne room at the end of Yom Kippur. Those are the A and B that I was telling you about up here. Trumpet, trumpet. All right, and now see, the Messiah calls up all remaining believers, dead and alive. The only surviving believers left are those in the protected wilderness, and it's 16 and 17 in 1 Thessalonians 4. Okay, thank you for listening, and I already told you the ordering information at the beginning of the video. May God bless you today and every day.